This morning in the Sunday Spotlight, we kick off one-on-one interviews with Southern Arizona's elected U.S. representatives. We'll start with the GOP freshman representative, Juan Ciscomani. As Congress gets back to work after their July 4th break, a look at where he stands on Southern Arizona's big issues, including veterans and water. Also, what his relationship with Democrat Raul Grijalva is like, and where Mr. Ciscomani stands when it comes to supporting a presidential candidate in 2024. First, a look at the big agenda ahead for Representative Ciscomani and other lawmakers. A vote on the National Defense Authorization Act could come in just days. This has been done on a bipartisan basis for decades. I asked the representative about where he stands on this legislation and the other bills coming down the line.
I want to start with the National Defense Authorization Act. This is something you guys are going to be tackling as you get back to work. Part of this includes more than 5% of a pay raise for service members, more housing allowances, and $300 million more dollars for Ukraine. I want to get your reaction to it and where you think you'll be on it.
Well, we've been tackling some pretty significant, I would say, challenges here in the last few weeks or months in Washington. Started with, of course, the appropriations process that has been ongoing. What kicked it off, that you and I have talked about before as well, has been the debt ceiling conversation. Once that was wrapped up, then we could move on to the debt ceiling conversation, and then now the NDAA and Farm Bill coming not too far behind that as well. So we've got, this is going to be a big year of tackling these kind of big projects as well. So the NDAA is definitely one of the ones that around the corner. How it ties into your question with what we've done with appropriations, of course, having a focus on veterans, and out of the 12 appropriation bills, we've increased the funding on those bills only on 3, and the other ones have received spending adjustments, one of them being veterans and defense, and we've actually increased both of those. So that ties into what you're mentioning here. Homeland Security is the third one, and that also has pay increases for Border Patrol agents and more funding for technology. It's all in the same theme of what we're investing in with the NDAA as well.
Before you moved, before you took the job there in D.C., I asked you what kind of Republican you were going to be. Were you going to be a moderate one? Which side were you going to be on? And your answer was what you told everyone. You're a Juan Ciscomani Republican. I was looking at your record. You are a co-sponsor of several pieces of Democratic legislation, ranging from water rights here in the West to Veterans Affairs. We've talked about bipartisanship before, you and me. What are you finding in the last 7 months when it comes to reaching across the aisle? Is it easier? Is it harder? What's it like? Because we know the country and Congress are very divided.
That's a great question. And I think if you're looking for it, you're going to find people on the other side of the aisle that are willing to work with you on issues that matter. One of the most recent ones for me was that now I'm co-chairing the Southwestern Caucus with a congressman from New Mexico, also a freshman, last name Vasquez, a Democrat, and we're both co-chairing this caucus because it's important. When you deal about issues that are, for example, transportation or trade and these kind of more regional issues, water, of course, border security, these are things that don't know kind of like state borders per se. They impact an entire region. So it's important to have that. Also, you mentioned the Colorado River Caucus that I'm also co-leading. This one is bipartisan. It's multiple states and also bicameral, meaning the Senate as well. Every single one of the pieces of legislation that I've introduced myself, I've had a Democratic co-sponsor because they're good ideas. We want to make sure that they make it all the way through the Senate and also reach over to the president's desk, and mainly around veterans, water, and border security. So if you really look for it and you're open to these ideas, and you also have to be open to not get everything that you want. If you're okay with, getting most of what you're looking for, but knowing that in life overall, you're not going to get everything you want, you can really get some neat things done here in Congress.
So talking about bipartisanship, there is a Democratic lawmaker in Southern Arizona in Raul Grijalva. He's been around some time. You partnered on a resolution to rename a post office in Patagonia recently. I'm curious, how many times do you talk to him? What is the relationship like between you two? Because you both represent Southern Arizona.
We do. We share a city. We share Tucson. So we talked early on. Of course, we had several phone calls as I was walking in. I also reached out when I was appointed to the Appropriations Committee, and I said, I'm going to be the only member in the Arizona delegation, Democrat or Republican, to have a seat at the table in appropriations. I want to make sure that the resources that need to come back to Arizona come back to Arizona. Share your priorities with me that you have in your district so that I can advocate for those, fight for those either border dollars or port of entry funding that we need, or roads, or whatever it is that can benefit Southern Arizona. I want to be helpful with that. So there are areas of overlap in our interest politically, and in a lot of ways we're gonna defer and we're gonna vote separate ways. Nevertheless, when it comes down to getting these wins, I think we can find common ground on that. And you mentioned one of them, renaming a post office after the late Jim Colby, is something that we were able to find common ground around. This effort, Andrew, has been started several times before by other members of Congress, and for one reason or another, it just hasn't been able to go all the way. I'm determined to see it through, and it's got a road ahead of it, but it is going to be an important aspect of how Raul and I can agree as well.
I'll ask you one more. Looking ahead to 2024, the race for president already picking up. A lot of people in your party want to be the next president, from the former president Donald Trump to Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, Mike Pence. The list goes on. What do you like when it comes to the nomination? Who are you getting behind?
I like the diversity that we have. I think it's a great testament to all that we have to offer as a party. If you just look at the names that you mentioned, different backgrounds, different ages, different political leanings on the side of the Republican side. We have different professional experiences as well. I think this is very reflective of the white tent of the Republican Party is now, in terms of all the different aspects of it. I think it's going to be an exciting race. I'm going to be running, of course, my own re-election, and I'll be busy with that. And that's more when it comes to the political side, what I'll be focusing on.
You have a name for who you'd like to see be president?
I want to make sure that we have a Republican in the White House.
And Mr. Ciscomani not naming a presidential candidate he favors yet, but we have heard there for one of the first times he is planning to run for re-election of his own next year. That is all for this week's Sunday Spotlight. Join me again here next week when we go one-on-one with Southern Arizona's Democratic Representative, Raul Grijalva. 13 News Live this morning. Back after this quick break.